Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Transportation and Environment Committee. Today, we're holding a work session on amending the right-of-way permit process. We're trying to make it a bit easier for residents to install a non-commercial structure on their own property by giving DPS control over the permit process when facilities encroach on county rights-of-way rather than having the county council deliberate the process. Do any of my colleagues need to make opening remarks, or should we give it to Dr. Orlin? Do you mind leading us through the staff packet? Or Ms. McCartney-Green?
Yes, I'm happy to be here today to walk you through the packet.
Thank you.
Sure. As you mentioned, expedited 1321 is a county executive bill that came over and seeks to do the following. Expand the authority of DPS to be able to issue and approve permits for certain right-of-ways, specifically for non-commercial private permanent installation that's an accessory to a residential use. So if you're asking exactly what is that, DPS has been able to say that there are certain commercial structures, for example, electric vehicle charging device or station, and I may use those terms interchangeable, a private storm drain pipes that's going to connect to a public system, a roof drain, sub pumps, playgrounds, and maybe a fence over a drain easement. These are all non-standard items that DPS currently does not have the authority to be able to approve a permit because these are considered permanent installations. Temporary obstructions to a right-of-way, DPS does have the authority, but they lack the authority for permanent obstructions. So with that being said, if the problem here is that residents have requested and have made the request to DPS to install that, and DPS has denied those. And so in essence, they would like the opportunity to be able to approve it. And if granted, the property owner would have to sign a maintenance and liability agreement. And so that would mitigate the risk for the county. It would hold the county harmless, provide better enforcement for DPS, and to be able, enforcement in terms of whether or not it needs to be removed or whether that permit needs to be revoked. Right now, DPS does not have that authority because there is no maintenance and liability agreement being signed. And in all with that saying that this bill, really the undertone is really the focus too on the electric vehicle charging stations. And Montgomery County has made very ambitious climate goals. And one of the things was looking at green gas house emission and what's causing that. And transportation was one of the factors of that. And looking at that, it looked at vehicles, electric vehicles, as being a great alternative. With that being said, finding a place to put them and to have the charging device was one of the things that DPS has looked into, and they've started a pilot program, which is on page 16. I provided those guidelines for you guys to look at it as well. But I'm also going to invite colleagues from the county executive, Atik, and Linda, and Maricel from the Department of Transportation to join to be able to talk about exactly the intent behind this bill, what it will do, and answer any questions that the council members may have concerning that.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Ms. Please go ahead.
Well, we're here to answer any questions you might have. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. You know, this is an important initiative for the county. It's we're really trying to give a better service to the residents and make it easier for everyone to own an electric car and to have an easier way to charge it. This is very important in areas where the property residents do not have access to a driveway, and they cannot install a charging station within their private property. So we are making a little piece of the right of way available for them, and we're implementing a process for them to do this.
Great. Thank you.
And hi, I'm Linda Kabilski. I'm the division chief for land development here at Department of Permitting Services. My colleague Atik Panshiri can speak to you guys as far as what our permit does, but I think Maricela gave you a really good overview of what our goals here were. But more importantly, the demand is there. And if we are legally allowed to issue a permit for these EV charging stations and other items, we can do it in a safe manner. We can make sure that it's not going to impede any pedestrian access. Right now, we obviously haven't seen any of this firsthand because most of the time folks are charging their cars overnight, not during the hours where our inspectors would be out and about. And they are literally, some folks are taking the cable from the house all the way across their front lawn, across the sidewalk, and plugging in to a space where their car can sit out in front of their home. So we're trying to do this in a way that makes sense, is good for the environment, is good for us, but most importantly, it's safe. It's safe for the community.
Right, Councilmember Reamer.
Thank you. You were starting to, make it in terms I can understand. So I have heard of homeowners who would like to be able to have an electric vehicle. They can't, they don't have a driveway. And so they don't know how to, do regular charging.
Right.
Would this permit allow them to, they could run an electric line to the curb and then build a post and have a charger hanging there? Is that why the permit is needed?
I'm dying to hear that myself. How is this envisioned? What does this look like? You have a plurality, you have a majority of EV owners on this committee, Ms. Kabilski.
So what you described is sort of what we had in mind. We have when we implemented or instituted our pilot program, we did put out a set of guidelines. So no, we do not envision that someone would simply put a 2x4 post out in the, next to a sidewalk and install their power to it and then plug in. There are some standards that we tried to set. Again, making sure that it's done safely. But yes, I think we've only permitted, maybe 3 during this pilot phase. And folks are trenching from the house where the power source is through their yard. I know in one case, the homeowner did go underneath our sidewalk. So it was between the homeowner's property underneath the sidewalk, so that it's buried. You don't have a cable where someone, could create a tripping hazard and things like that. But the hope is you go out and you purchase an EV charging station from a vendor of your choice. So it looks like exactly what it is. It's just not a post with some power hooked up to it. That was something we were trying to avoid. Atik, if you want to chime in, go right ahead and do so, because the guidelines that we published were pretty robust.
Ms. Kabilski, sorry, do we have those guidelines? I've seen Circle 16, but
yes, we do have a guideline as the pilot program. Probably Marcella can forward. It's really
okay.
Really,
they're not in the packet, right?
May not be in the packet.
Council President, it's in the packet on page 15.
Yes, they were provided.
Oh, okay.
On page circle 16 through 18.
Yes, on Circle 16. Yep.
Oh, and 19. Okay. What I didn't mean to cut you off, Atik. You probably are going to answer this question, but what I saw was if you have an EV and you have a driveway, garage, parking pad, no problem. And I'm surprised you don't already have that authority. And to me, that's not the issue, right? If you need to have a new curb cut, then it makes sense that DOT would be engaged here. And but for all those other constituents that do, like you said, have a cord stretching out across the right of way to the street now to charge there, because not everybody has a driveway, and we're not necessarily encouraging people to put in a driveway, or we don't want that financial barrier to be necessary to have an electric vehicle, right?
Absolutely, and
right.
That's the purpose.
Right.
It's cost prohibitive to build a driveway for EV charging station, and it will discourage people go that route.
Exactly. And it's a stormwater issue separately that this committee is very familiar with.
Absolutely.
So say you do your trenching under your yard, whether or not you have a sidewalk, then you have a type 2 charging station at the curb in the county right away?
Yes. And that's where
that would be permitted under the vision of this bill.
Correct. Yes.
Because that's a lot safer than a cord stretched across either a sidewalk or a front lawn that technically is in the county right away and somebody walking their dog could trip on.
That is correct. And we have some pictures of people are doing crazy things that you would not imagine how they are charging their vehicles.
I've stopped being surprised years ago. Okay. Sorry. So, Atik, what did you want to say now that I've totally cut you off?
No, I think you already knew the answer. So what I was saying, it's a safe method of doing it. It's less costly. And there are situations, if there's no sidewalk, then it's not much of an issue.
Right.
They can put it in the private property or put it close to the curb. It will be safe. And if there's a sidewalk, we want to make sure that they install it properly. They get all the necessary permits, and the county's interest is protected.
It aligns with our climate goals. It aligns with our stormwater goals, right?
Absolutely. And there might be some other utilities. We don't want them to cut it in order to install it. So it's a safe manner to install it.
And if private homeowners were to install these type 2 chargers in the county right away at the curb, the possession of them, the ownership would ride with the property. When you sell the house, that would, just like your solar panels stay with the house, so does the type 2 charger. Is that right?
Absolutely. Unless they want to remove it, that will be at their choice.
Take it with them, right? Yeah. And they're signing a a liability and maintenance agreement. So that covers the question of what about when the thing ages and falls apart? It's on the homeowner.
That is correct. And also it gets recorded. So if anybody do a title search, it goes with the land if they want to stay there. And it goes with the land, and the purchaser will assume the responsibility.
Does that need to be in this bill, or is that in your regulations?
It will be in our regulation. I think it's in the bill. Correct me if I'm wrong, Linda, that is in the bill.
It's not in the bill. It would be a part of the regulations, Council President.
Right. I didn't think it was in the bill. What do you expect to charge for the permit?
It is our minimum fee, and I don't have it right off the top of my head. It's a little over $200 for our permit. There is also an electrical permit that obviously they would have to get to make that connection, and that ranges anywhere from $100 to $150, I believe.
Mr. Hupper,
that's a lot of permitting fees for something that aligns with our stormwater and our climate goals for the purchaser of a new electric vehicle. Yes, Emil, sorry.
Just to clarify, the requirement for the maintenance and liability agreement is part of the bill.
It is? Okay.
It is.
The requirement. Yeah. But what the thing looks like.
I'm sorry.
In the liability agreement, that just indemnifies the county against like slip and fall cases or other personal liability issues?
Right. Or if let's say, for instance, a snowplow hits it and damages the EV charging station, it holds the county harmless.
That would never happen, would it, Director Williams?
Never.
Not to my knowledge. Our folks are so skilled with that big giant blade.
As far as you know, that would never happen. Okay.
To the best of my knowledge, I should clarify that.
As long as they don't put it on their mailbox.
Yeah.
So is that a good analogy? We currently have mailboxes in the county right away at the curb, right? And the sun still comes up in the morning?
Yeah. Hopefully we will not have this issue. The charging stations will be set back enough. Again, the mailboxes are usually overlapping with the curb, and in trying to get curb to curb plowing, they do sometimes get struck. So, one gets damaged, we go ahead and clean those up. But, hopefully we won't have this issue. It's something we'll monitor, and if we need to take a different approach with these things, but they should be set back from the roadway edge. And that's part of permitting process is to review some type of sketch of what's involved, to go out and do a site visit. So there is time and effort involved by the DPS staff that is part of the permit fee, because they are an enterprise fund and need to be self-sufficient. Thus, you know, Linda, I don't know what the minimum permit is and how it relates to the time involved with planned review and ensuring the electrician certification of what's being built.
It's actually all of that. And our right-of-way inspectors will go out before an application is even submitted to DPS to make sure that the proposed location is even possible. So we will do work prior to even receiving an application or any application fee. So that has to cover our inspections, our plan review, the administration of that permit, all of that. And again, it's two different divisions. It's not just land development. It's also our commercial building folks who will handle the electrical inspection as well.
And these are Ms. Kabilski, these are the lowest fees that you are allowed to charge under your current regulations, correct?
That's correct.
Arguably, we should be giving these out like candy, shouldn't we?
Right.
We do want to meet our climate goals and our stormwater goals. Years ago, the director, 100 years ago, like before we knew so much about climate, the director of the Maryland Energy Administration asked me to put in a state bill giving residents, like so many in Baltimore that don't have driveways, a tax break to put in electric charging stations from their houses. Why shouldn't we be doing that?
Well, that's a question for someone else, probably not me.
And would the county executive support it?
So, but what I can say is, as far as what we have done with our pricing structure here, it really is probably the lowest we can do, because we are an enterprise fund and we have to cover all of our overhead, our salaries, the lights in this building right now that where we're using electricity ourselves. Our permit fees have to cover all of those costs.
How much was it again? Could you say?
Let's say, I believe it's about 220, let's say $225. Our fees fluctuate depending on our rate stabilization factor. But I think when the rates were approved in 2017, it was a $225 flat fee. So it's a little bit more than that for the right-of-way permit. And the electrical permit's going to vary depending on what size meters and things like that they put on. I can't speak to that, but I was told it was anywhere from $100 to $150 for the electrical permit.
I really am glad the chair focused our attention on this issue. This is really an important piece of this conversation. And is there any precedent for a fee where DPS, every 6 months or every year puts in an appropriation request from the general fund to offset an expense? I mean, this does seem like something where we don't want to charge this fee because it's expensive and it does deter people. When you add up the cost, if it costs $1,000 to do a curbside charging station, a lot of people are going to say, hey, it's just not worth it. It's like you have to be almost ideological about it in order to be willing to go through with that. And so any way we could shave that off, if we could waive that fee, but you could bill the county functionally for it, or it sounds like you would need some other kind of legislation in order for your enterprise fund not to be charged, or maybe just to charge the general fund. I don't know, but I do think we ought to have a better approach that can not add this expense into the, into the total. It's just, this is something we ultimately need everybody to do. And it can't just be for those who are extra committed and so forth,
Understood. And again, when we talked about this pilot program and the demand and all of that for these EV charging stations, one of the things that was a big topic of discussion was, try not to basically force people to go out and do a curb cut and install a driveway, because that's a major expense in most cases. Even if it's just a standard driveway with no big slopes and things like that on the property, it can be a huge expense. So that was part of our thinking. was keeping the cost down for the homeowner, and this is the solution we came up with. Certainly, we could look into how DPS can recover its fees if we were to not charge the homeowner for the work that we're doing. That's something I would need to bring up with our director and see if we couldn't strategize on what that means. I know in just from my work here at DPS, I know there was at one time a transfer of funds for other agencies in which we don't collect fees, like MCPS. But I feel like that practice stopped a long time ago for DPS getting a transfer of money to cover our work. I don't think we've done that in a long time, probably because of fiscal constraints. But
I mean, this is going to be
Mr. Reamer, I believe, as it relates to the DPS's issue, that as an enterprise fund, they always need to be kept whole.
Right.
There has been discussions about whether the county should get more involved in incentivizing EV ownership and the ability to charge from home. Obviously every EV owner has a variety of choices. You go to a rapid charger, like a Tesla rapid charger station that's out there. Do you put the charger in your own home? I think as it relates to this issue, we need to think more broadly. Or are we just trying to incentivize them for the piece that they're trying to put in the right of way if they have no other option, or for an EV charger station on their property? Would the county be willing to pay for something that's in their driveway, in their garage, or just in the right of way? So I think this is an interesting topic. We can take it back to the county executive, see if he wants to put together some type of larger program as part of the climate action plan. But I think of these things in separate paths, if you will. The alternative is homeowners would have to get a franchise to do this right now. What we're trying to do is give the wherewithal to DPS to do this by way of permit as opposed to a franchise. How to incentivize or minimize the cost to the potential EV owner, I think, is yet another discussion that we need to pursue.
Agreed. Yeah, no, I think the questions that Councilmember Reamer and I are asking about how to lower the sort of cost of entry to this, especially for a new car owner that has just made a big purchase in the first place and is looking at what's the overall cost. Might be a way to improve the bill, might be a way to come back with another regulation, and we can work with Ms. McCartney-Green on possible approaches as well. I'm not suggesting any of that as a reason to hold the bill up.
Thank you.
I'm a little surprised that you still need, well, we've spent most of the time on EVs, and I've spent way too many hours in sewer category change hearings in this committee. I'm a little surprised that you don't have the authority over private storm drain pipes and sump pumps and monumental mailboxes already. Are you saying all those come to the council now?
We just simply do not allow it because we don't have the authority. So if somebody wants to pursue it, then they have to get into a franchise agreement to the council.
I see. Okay. Councilmember Glass.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I associate myself with the comments and direction that you and Councilmember Reamer were mentioning, that we want to lower the barrier, right? To encourage as much of this as possible. And while the two of you, as has already been noted, are EV owners yourselves, my 2010 Honda Fit does not have much life in it yet. And when the day comes that it forces me to make this decision, I will be getting an EV. So clearly this is relevant to me, or at least the direction I want to go in. But so as I'm walking around my neighborhood, walking my dogs, I see that there are people who've basically taken their power line and kind of wrapped it around their fence, if they have a fence, so it's not on the ground. And clearly this would enable them to safely keep it in the right of way, just short of the curb or so. But, one question, and it might be a very obvious question, but when these are built, and we encourage and allow more of these charging stations in the right of way, what is the law state about any old person just pulling up their car and charging their car with somebody else's charging station that is in the right of way?
I can try to answer the question, Linda, if you'd like.
Please, go ahead.
Okay, so that is a really great question. And the way the property owners are proposing the use of the charging stations is it's connected to their switch, to their breaker actually inside the house. So when they're not using it, they can just turn off the switch and there's no power in the station. So nobody can come and just plug in and use someone else's power.
So the way that it's thought of right now is that the onus is on the owner to turn off the breaker so that there is no charger, there's no energy actually going to the plug-in, right? To the charger, to the handle. I don't know in EV, so help me with the terminology here. Right. So, but let's say somebody doesn't do that, right? And that for their own convenience, it's always on and they can plug it in, you know, at the end of the day, if they're driving the maximum that their car allows them to drive. But in between that time, a neighbor or somebody else comes by and just decides to plug in. Is there a law that's preventing them from doing that? Or is there anything in this that conveys the ownership from, you know, the electric source of that property?
No, I don't think there is. And furthermore, actually, some people are concerned about people parking in their spot in front of their EV charging station, right? So it's the same thing. It's sort of a similar situation where we can't enforce anything like that. And we are not going to, you know, we can't dedicate parking on the public right of way for people to charge their stations. So unfortunately, they need to work out the details with their neighbors and, you know, ensure that they can use their power and just charge when their parking spot is available. It's just part of where we are right now.
So that makes sense, right? I understand the part about not being able to mandate who's parking where on the street, right? And we typically don't manage those types of things. But I would think that in this, we could say legally that the property owner has the sole use unless they convey it to somebody else, right? Because if that parking spot is open in front of their home and someone comes by and fills up their battery, that would not be against the law. It might be unneighborly, of course, and it might be, well, quite frankly, I would consider that theft. It's energy theft. And so I would actually prefer that if we codify this, unless someone tells me there's another reason not to do so, I would think we should strengthen this law to make sure that the people who are installing them have the sole ownership of them.
Go ahead.
I think, you know, our intent to get more of a standardization of the charger post that's there adjacent to the curb that can be secured by the property owner, so they have, you know, both the ability to turn off the breaker and secure, you know, the end point of the cord would hopefully do that. I think what you're discussing is from the hodgepodge of approach that we have out there, that people just run their own extension cords and the like, and then you have those opportunities, you know, they don't intend that everybody else to use it, but that happens. But we end up with more of a standardized type of post that Linda and the TEC are looking for here, done by a master electrician, and it's confirmed by the county. I think through that process, we'll end up with considerably less of it. I don't disagree if there's a need to make it, you know, belts and suspenders within the law itself. But, you know, where does that belong as it relates to the granting of a permit?
And right. So I'm just thinking practically from my house, right? So if I were to extend to the curb for the future car that I expect to get, so I pull up, I turn it on, I plug it in, and then at maybe the next morning or so, right, I'm in my house, I turn off the circuit breaker, I go back outside and I unplug it, right? But then I come back home, I then have to go inside, have to turn on the circuit breaker, then go back outside, plug it in. And so while I think from an ownership perspective, that might make this the case, the argument for us to be hands off, But I'm not sure in reality that's what's going to happen. And I'm concerned that there's going to become some Hatfield and McCoy type situations of, instead of, drilling for oil on my property, you're taking my charger and filling up your car. And so I just share that as a cautionary tale, knowing human nature and knowing some of the communities that we're in where cars are parked back to back and people are parallel parking in their neighborhoods, right? Those are the type of dense neighborhoods that we're talking about in some respect. Yeah. And anything I think we can do to maybe get ahead of those concerns might benefit us in the long run. So I just share those concerns.
Sure.
I think I do agree with you, but I think the industry might have been improving. Maybe they will recognize the vehicle and some kind of a connection between the charging and the vehicle because technology is changing. So there could be more improvements coming along that more and more people are using electric vehicles now. So
I think that would be a great industry safeguard, right? An electric key, something like that.
Right.
I yield back to you, Mr. Chair.
Councilmember Reamer.
Just back to the cost issue. An analogy here is is CUPF, and CUPF is an enterprise fund. We fund. The council provides an appropriation every year that makes money available at CUPF to discount the fees for nonprofits, certain nonprofits, to rent space. So I would think we could easily add, $25,000. Doesn't sound like you're overwhelmed by these just yet. Something like that to get you going. So I think we would need to hear from you, and I agree we shouldn't hold up the bill, but I think we would need to hear from you how you might administer something like that, and what some of the pathways would be, where should the funding go, something like that. But there is that is a precedent for an enterprise fund to not charge fee for a certain user, and it seems like this is one. I did have a question about the storm drain. So this legislation also allows you to provide a permit for a homeowner to tie their storm drain into the county storm drain system. Are there any examples or incidents that you're contemplating where this is something you're concerned about being able to allow?
Yes, there has been situations that people, they have yard inlets and they discharge it on above ground and it goes over the sidewalks and in the wintertime becomes icy and it's dangerous. So as we are moving forward, we're thinking if there's existing storm drain along the roadway, they can tap into the existing storm drain. It goes into the water and the underground. You'll never see it, and it's not going to be a nuisance, and it's not going to be dangerous. And these are small pipes. They're not really huge and big.
Has DEP signed off on that? It seems like DEP would want them to keep that water on their property, in the ground if possible.
I'm not really sure if that's, Mr. Reamer, if this issue of DEP is a drainage issue that we don't want the land to be overwhelmed, and the drainage goes into the public system. It's kind of a clean water that goes into the system. We have not thought about getting DEP involved in this one.
Well, I guess maybe I'm not understanding this, but it's been my understanding that generally we want homeowners to allow the water from their homes to soak into the ground on their property if at all possible.
Yes, we do have that. We do have drainage review that they have to have a 30-foot of overland flow before it enters into the right-of-way. But there are situations that it's not really possible. So in those situations, we would like it to be connected safely into the public system. Same thing with the roof drains and some pumps. We'd like them to connect it to the storm drain system instead of discharging into the gutter or into the curb, so it becomes icy or become nuisance. We do have situations that now the neighbors are complaining about each other, so that this
Yeah, I mean, I can think of one near my house where the homeowner has their gutter tied into a pipe and it drips out onto the sidewalk, and then in the winter it freezes over and it's dangerous.
Yeah.
And it seems to me they ought to be more responsible and make sure that that water is not accumulating on the sidewalk. One option would be for them to trench and go underground and tie into the sewer. I would hope that that would be a very last approved option, and that they should be required to do a rain garden or something else, you know, preferably.
Oh, no, those are our practice, but rain gardens and dry ponds and dry wells and things like that. But if all fails, then they have to discharge into the right of way. We whether they discharge it safely into the right of way somewhere instead of making it unsafe.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
One more. Just wanted to verify. So this is for non-commercial use. So some have asked us about why can't you allow companies to install commercial charging stations like on light poles or on utility poles, so that people, if you live on a street with several apartment buildings, this bill does not help you really, because there's no homeowner to, anyway, like this doesn't affect that. It's got really nothing to do with that. Yeah. All right. So I won't really ask you for any comments on that. All right.
This really is not for that. It's not commercial. However, we are looking into that. We have a separate thing into that already, because we realize there's a need for that. The light poles are mostly in Montgomery County, they're PEPCOs, so they're the utility companies. But we are talking to them about this and see how we can collaborate to make this happen.
Thank you.
Okay. Colleagues, if we want to take up the bill, we would just need a motion.
Let's approve the bill. Are there any amendments that were needed, Ludine, or anything?
Not to my knowledge, Councilmember.
All right. Let's approve the bill.
Second.
Motion a second. All those in favor of the bill, please raise your hand. Terrific. That is unanimous. Good work, Ms. McCartney-Green. Very precise packet. Sorry for my bad notes here. And thank you all. It's very educational. Good discussion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
See you tomorrow. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
On eastbound Lancaster Mill Road,